Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you. I feel like I have my back to everyone, so and call that's gonna be all right. And call the June 8th, 2023 special meeting to order.
Can we just look around? This is so weird.
With all board members present. I'd like to make a motion to adopt today's agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we had Richard, I think, and then Trustee Hazen as a second. Okay, let's have our student. Well, I guess we don't have our little push button thingy, so we're going to start with Trustee Nepomuceno.
Aye.
Trustee Catoriano. Trustee Barrera. What? Oh, Trustee Hazen.
Aye.
Trustee Pedersen.
Aye.
Trustee Whitehurst Payne.
Holly.
And Bazo, aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. And I'm just going to turn this right over to Dr. Jackson and Dr. Bagula to please open the workshop.
Thank you, President Bazo. Board trustees, everyone here. Good to see you all. Did I shave back there?
I know.
It is my pleasure to welcome all of you here, all of our community partners, our educational partners, staff here, all of our students. What a great responsibility that I have to lead the San Diego Unified School District. But as I say quite often, and it is true for me, that I am only able to do what I do because of all of you. And I really do mean that. Thank you for being a partner in this work. And thank you for allowing me to share a few words as we open the LCAP, Local Control Accountability Plan Workshop for the Board of Education. I do want to thank all of our team members who have put this together. I think it's important to acknowledge the spirit of Ubuntu, that I'm speaking here and others will speak, but there is a great team of people who have put this together, the change and the shifts, very thoughtful. I especially want to thank Callie Harrington, our Director of Strategic Planning and Innovation over here. Can we give her a round of applause? Yes. This serves two purposes. One, to lift her voice up and share that, but two is a little bit of embarrassment as well. So that is true, that there is some intention there. But she does great work, and I thank you, Callie, for your leadership and your vision in connecting what we all want, what we all desire, and that spirit of, as I will talk about, the concentric circle, the collective. So thank you very much. I want to remind us of our work, and it's important to know that our work is about ensuring that our students and our staff, I want to say both, our students and our staff, that we are making sure that we are making an impact on the learning outcomes that are designed by this collective group of people for our students and our staff. Often we talk about professional learning and we say it's all about the students, but this is about all of us becoming better as a community so that we can make a difference in the lives of our students and our staff. And what we know is that when we see the relationship between a student, an educator, and one who represents family, it could be a mentor, it can be an uncle, a grandparent, it can be anyone who represents family for our young people, we know that the outcome is usually one of success and possibilities. And so we have to gather around this concept of recognizing that we have to develop trusting and honest and caring relationships for all of our students. And when we do that, our students will achieve at very, very high levels, and they will get to choose whatever that is. That's not for us to choose. It's for us to then get out of the way. And I can't tell you enough how much I've learned about being in the way. My own children, other children, educators, And time again, whether we're talking about students or we're talking about educators, talking about this role, I remind myself to do my very best to create the conditions and then get out of the way. I almost did that. Here, right here, and I don't. We need to get out of the way. And that's about ego, right? That's about fear. That's about insecurity for me. And I need to get that in check. You know, we all have egos, and that's okay. That brings us to a place. But we need to get our egos in check and recognize that, yes, a bit about us, but more so about the collective. And our students, and we share story after story after story, and that will get us to a place of meeting our vision. And that says that we are going to ensure that students are prepared for the career and the college of their choice. Not our choice, but again, we like to make it about us. And so I'm going to invite us to shift our mindset that, let us create the conditions and get out of the way for our young people. And so when I talk about our core values, and the first slide talks here about equity, belonging, and thriving, I've defined this for myself. And I ask that you think about what equity means to you. For me, it has really become that mathematical concept of seeing our children without debt. That we see value in what we see on the surface, and we see value in the hearts and the minds and the souls of our children. That it is not with debt because you are a Black child. It is not with debt because you have multiple languages that you tap into. It is not with debt that you have an IEP. It is great value. It is with great value. And for us, being about equity is ensuring that every child gets what they need and they want. But an example of this, and I've shared this, is we don't yet see that. And I have some evidence. We have over 11,000, just under 12,000 students, spotlight students, who we don't yet know how to serve. We have to have the courage and the tenacity and the wherewithal, and we have to learn how to meet their needs. And I tell you this, last night I was at a tremendous graduation for students who have graduated through our high school diploma program, students with continuing education through the community colleges. And I will say that there were many people in the audience, I'm sure, but the community college showed up with about 40 people. Board members, executive leaders, staff, and we had 4. If we are committed to equity, then we should show up for our children. And many of the students, 60 years old, 50 years old, many are adults in our system who are working on technical skills to be better for our children and for us. Many students, Black, brown, from Mexico, from Russia, from Haiti. And we have the audacity to sit here and go through day in and day out and say we're about students? I'm calling us out on that. And I'm going to call out myself first. So we can go out and do things, but we have to be about things. And we have to check ourselves first. And then we have to have the courage to check us as a collective. There is no way that our words and our actions can be different. Our words say the right thing, that we are about our spotlight students. But I tell you what, we had over 500 spotlight students in our community. We need to be better. I'm going to demand that we be better. Not for me. Do it for yourself. And I've said this to principals. You have committed, we have committed individually to be about something. Let's be about those things. Belonging, making sure that we see and we hear each of our students, not in the way that we want to see them or we want to hear them. Let me repeat that. Not in the way that we want to see them or hear them, but the way they want to be seen and to be heard. I don't know about you, but it's crazy to me, and it's awesome to me, that a district like us can love our children and our staff and our community in the LGBTQIA community, and 10 miles away, and maybe even 5 miles away. Now that's a darn shame. So I am proud of us. But we need to expand that and show others how to see and hear children and adults the way they want to be seen and the way they want to be heard. That's not our decision. That is not ours to make. And I'm thankful for this board and this community. We've made some steps. But we still have children that we do not see and we do not hear, and they become our adults that we do not see and we do not hear. And many of you in this room are not seen and heard the way you want to be seen, and therefore you can't be your best. And I will commit that with our leadership as a collective, we will meet this goal of a sense of belonging for students and staff and our families. And thriving. You know, we have this idea that thriving looks a certain way. And I will tell you, first and foremost, I thought thriving was being a parent of children who played sports. You know what's thriving right now for me is a son who sings and has the opportunity to go to Europe. I've never been to Europe. And you know what he says? He says, "I'm sorry, Dad," as he sends me a picture of him drinking a pint of beer. I guess that's what they can do in Europe, right?
Ask Sharon.
You know what's thriving to me is to see my older son, who I thought would play college basketball, working at Scripps La Jolla in the emergency room. Not playing basketball, but helping young people, freshmen and junior varsity players, learn the game of basketball. And you know what he says to me? "Hey, Dad, the head coach," I know this is televised, sorry, Coach. He wants them to be more advanced, but that's not where they are. That's not what they need. That's not what they're communicating to us. This happens at all levels, and what I'm appreciating is that he has that ability to thrive in his voice and to see and to hear people the way they want to be seen and to be heard. And that he sees value in what they bring and not as a deficit. That's what makes me proud. And I don't think I had anything to do with it. I know Sharon says you did, but I don't think I did. They have a great mother. They had great people around them that were about equity, about belonging, and creating the conditions to thrive. And if we can do it for the Jackson sons, then we can do it for all children. But we have to do it for ourselves first. Please see yourselves the way you want to be seen and the way you want to be heard, and have the courage to demand it from others. And so these are our core values. As we think about our theory of action, we have to think about how we are designed to make sure that we stay focused on this. And I know that there are many opinions, but here's the reality. As a lot of us work in the central office, I'm going to encourage you again, this is not about us, this is about our students at the center. We say it's all about the students. However, as you see the puzzle pieces, this is about the adults and mainly the adults who are closest to the student. Why? Because there's a theory, the educator and the student and the family. That relationship must be there. And our job is to support them in being amazing at the school site. This is not about us being amazing. We can be as amazing as we can be. And if we are not helping them be amazing, then guess what? We're going to continue to have 12,000 and 13,000 and more students who are not going to thrive. And so our outcomes must be about that. How are we working with the school sites in the way that they need us to work with them, not how we think they should be working? So we can take this concept from equity, belonging, and thriving to the systems level. And mainly here at the core. So our students are centered. They are nested around staff who are engaged, staff who are learning, staff who feel belonging, staff who are nested in our central supports. That's why we exist. That's why we exist. So the question I have is, then how are our families engaging? How are our families seeing themselves and being seen the way they need to be seen so they feel welcome and they have a sense of belonging? This is not about us telling the families how they need to show up. It's about us allowing them to show up the way they need to be shown, how they want to show up. So then we have some questions. If the students are at the center, how present and engaged are our students? And even more so, what do we do when our students aren't present and aren't engaged? How do we respond then? How do our school systems show up for our students who are not showing up? How will our students learn each and every day is a great question. But I would argue the follow-up question is, and how will we respond when they are not learning? It's challenging. We all know this. But that's not the question. It's how will we show up when things aren't going the way they should go for the 30% of our students? So keep that image in your head of that almost 12,000 students. How will we support the idea of the whole child? Are we so closed-minded that we can't see that this is about the whole child? Making sure that we can support students and staff and their needs around mental health and transportation and access to broad and challenging curriculum and access to first-time instruction and access to tutoring and access to extended learning and access to language and access to visual and performing arts. How are we creating the conditions for that to happen? And here's the thing. We all know what's possible, and yet the adults get in the way. And we're not open to changing schedules. We're not open to having more opportunities for our students. We need to check ourselves. Ultimately, how will everyone, not just our students, everyone in our school district feel like they truly belong? That they are truly seen and they're truly heard and they are valued and they see their worth and we see their worth. That they are loved. And when I talk about love, we need to love unconditionally. I know it's crazy, superintendent talking about love, harmony, peace, joy. We need that in our lives, and we need that in our district right now. We need greater humanity. Pull up to a student, pull up to a staff member, and just create the conditions, and amazing will happen. That is something that we have as human beings. But we don't bring our full selves. My commitment, I'm going to bring my full self. My mom might whoop me if I don't. You know, this is about making sure that we are a space and a place for people to really be about their future potential. So let's be about that. And when we are about that, I believe that's true equity work. That's what I believe. Other people may define it some way, some other way. But that, for me, it hits hard in the soul, in the heart, in my mind. That's what hits me. When you can connect with me on that level, you got me. If you can't connect with me on that level, then I'm going to keep moving and I'm going to search for others. I'm going to bring you along because I think you can find something in that and you can help others. So I'm going to encourage you as you think about the day. Are we there yet? We are not there. This is a journey. We have to get closer. So over the last year, we've been doing work. And the question is, how are we getting closer to what I just shared? How are we measuring that? How are we making changes to that? That's learning. And if we are a learning organization, then we should be proud of our accomplishments and more proud of those things that we have not accomplished, as long as we have some now. What do we do? And how are we going to make sure that we can measure that? Because we learn by our mistakes more than we learn from our successes. Somebody wrote that. You can find that quote somewhere. Now the purpose of today, because people are getting anxious, I didn't mean to talk this long. That's not what the script says, but I get excited when I can talk about core values and concentric circle. Our purpose today is really to talk about our LCAP, but I would ask that it's about our core values and our concentric circle and how that marries with our LCAP and our work. And we know the technical parts of this. This is a 3-year plan. This is the 3rd year of that 3-year plan. It has been a space and a place for us as a local district to take responsibility of the goals and the outcomes and the expenditures. Some expenditures, about 33% of our expenditures are in the LCAP. And so this is really for us to talk about how we do what we do, why we do what we do, and what we actually do. And I would say we need to get greater alignment to the concentric circle with our LCAP. So as you go through the day, hold that space and think about, as an organization, how we get better at that. And I would say the LCAP was just an iteration that came off of Vision 2020. So we had already developed a strategic plan. So know that as we think about Vision for 2030, Vision for 2035 and 40, we need to be thinking about alignment here. And so today is this opportunity for us to give and provide a space and a place for an update on the impact of our current work, what shifts must be made, and also how will we monitor and evaluate that. And this is critical piece. This is critical. How we monitor and evaluate so that we can make changes. Our commitment is about each and every learner, so I won't reiterate that. Particularly, and I will say this and I will be unapologetic about this, our most marginalized, and we know historically, our Black and brown children and our students in poverty. Whether you are white, whether you are Black, whether you speak a different language, this is about those who have been seen and heard the way we wanted to see them, in a way that they are less than. If you quote me on that, put it in context, because that sounds weird. We need to be about all of our children, but we can't do that if we are not going to see and hear our children who are Black and are brown and have been historically marginalized, our students with IEPs, our students who are learning multiple languages. So please know that for us, we have to create those conditions for us to be able to say, yes, that is our vision. Again, if we can do that, then we can say we're about equity, belonging, and thriving. But until then, we can't say that that's what we're about. These are our core values. And so I'm going to turn it over to someone who is much more succinct and a beautiful partner. Thank you. I think that's all you have to hear from me for the whole day. Thank you for giving me the space and the place to show up with you, by you, for our children. Dr. Bagula, thank you. And
Thank you.
they're either ready or ready, one of the two.
Good morning and buenos dias, and sorry about the back piece. But one of the things that we've been talking about as a whole organization, and in order to live into the notion of equity, belonging, and thriving in that concentric circle, this has been what we have been talking about and discussing and dialoguing, and I will even say arguing with, that to be is greater than or equal to than the to do. And what this means is, how human-centric are we being in what we do? And I think about myself as a classroom teacher. I could plan beautiful lessons, standards-based lessons, script my questions, but if the children come in and need something else right in front of me, then I have to respond to them as a human being, human to human being. And so sometimes my to-do list got shifted. Sometimes my to-do list became something else based on how I was showing up and how the children were showing up. So this is that same notion of that piece around how are we engaging with others? How are we doing what we need to do? How are we relating to folks? How are we asking questions? How are we creating those conditions for people to be amazing? And I love what you said, Dr. Jackson, about the future potential. And I always think about this as an ideal coach. If we're looking for a coach or if we're looking for a teacher, we want that person to see our future potential self. Like, what is the gift that we can actually do? And then what are the supports I need to do this? And as a young first-generation immigrant woman, I will tell you that I thank all of my teachers who saw that in me and even named it for me and said, you would make a great leader, you would make a great writer. They saw this future potential in me, named it, and then loved me and supported me to this very table today. And so those are the conditions that we're talking about. How do we do that? Not only for our students, but I will also say for each other. We all have to show up and be amazing. We all have that potential, and we all require those nurturing pieces around us, surrounding us. So this also captures the notion, and I will say it again because I like to talk about love in organizations. In the Western world, we think about love as romantic love, but we're talking about the radical kind of love that changes communities. The radical kind of love that loves your community, that loves students, that loves your work, that loves your life's purpose. And so how are we doing the work? And so our notion is that, yes, the to be is greater than or equal to than the to do. So how I go about my day, engaging with other people, is more important than actually all of those tasks that I can cross off my list. So how are we doing that? And what we hope is that you see that in our teams today as you look at posters, and I'm really proud of everyone that's here today. To talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going, because as Dr. Jackson said, this is 3 of 3. This is, I want to say, my first year completion here. And so really thinking about how we've engaged our colleagues in learning. As you know, we've expanded the learning opportunities for our staff, for our adults. We were holding principals institutes, but now we have associate principal institutes, central office leaders institutes, because we believe not only in the collective, but that we have to come together to learn. And so a few things that you're going to see today getting closer and closer to that concentric circle is that collective responsibility that we're building. What I love about today is that it's not one person presenting, but it's a group of people that are leading this change. And so you will see groups of people coming together to talk about their work. We also want to make sure that we pay attention to the impact that we're having so that we're able to make data-informed decisions to say, maybe that idea wasn't the best one. We need to pivot. And so how are we evaluating, monitoring our impact? You will see evidence of that, of those discussions, of how do we do that? How do we pay attention to our impact? But lastly, and more importantly, is again, how we be and how we show up. Are we showing up in order to love on our students, love on our colleagues, and make sure we're building those conditions? We hope that you see that today. And so I'm really proud and grateful that Callie Harrington planned this session to be such a collective. I've been to these sessions before, and I love the amount of people that are here, the energy that is here, and again, that collective responsibility. So I want to say thank you, Callie, for planning. This is a piece of that concentric circle in action. And so thank you for planning it, and I'm going to hand it off to you.
I will be the most succinct. So just to reground us in our 6 LCAP goals that we have cultivating inclusive anti-racism, access to broad and challenging curriculum, accelerating student learning, quality leadership teaching and learning, family and community engagement, and well-orchestrated district-wide support services. What we won't see this year, because if you blink, you missed it, Goal 7, strategic support for designated schools. We are no longer on the state required list to maintain a Goal 7, which is why it is not in our LCAP this year. Forget I have to click 2 things. And as Dr. Bagula mentioned, within our concentric circle, the day today was designed to really bring the concentric circle model to life. We know we aren't there yet, but this is our aspiration in mind. So it's going to be a different way of engaging. You will see that there's these beautiful posters surrounding the room. We have it set up here in the auditorium, as well as there's posters in room 5. We will split ourselves up into 2 groups. And the real intent of the day is to engage instead of, as Dr. Bagula alluded to, the last few times that we've done these presentations, it's been a pretty intense 6-7 hours of sitting and getting. And we really want to engage all the people who are sitting behind our backs right now with the work that staff is leading. So the presentations have educational partners presenting, as well as some of our executive leadership team. And it's going to be a quick 3-4 minute presentation explaining their poster, and the rest of the time is going to be spent engaging. So please feel free to ask questions, provide input, and engage in the work that you all are seeing within the posters. Next one. And the process, like I just narrated, so everybody's going to start with a poster. You'll receive a brief presentation. The entire intent is to engage. And then after 10 minutes, we're going to ask everybody to shift to the next poster. Each poster has 3 guiding questions. They're all a little different, but the first question was, what was your impact during the 22-23 school year? And, sorry, what was your impact during the 22-23 school year? And that's the current year that we're in right now. And then because of that impact, how did you change or alter your goals for the 23-24 school year? And then moving forward from that, how are you going to monitor and measure? Am I good now? How will you monitor and measure the work that you have in the 23-24 LCAP? And that's really what we're here to talk about today. The posters were designed to not replicate any of the board presentations that we've already received throughout the year. So everything that you see presented is new. We haven't done it yet this year. However, if you wish to engage in work that has already been presented on throughout the year, lining this hallway out here are presentations that are also on poster boards that are replications of board presentations that have already been provided. And while they won't be staffed, we have sticky notes, pens, so please feel free to give your feedback on those and just put them right on the poster. And that's how we're gonna get started today. So I don't like to do this, but I'm gonna assign because I want the trustees to be spread out. So if we can have trustee Nepomuceno all the way down to trustee Pedersen, head to room 5 once the presenters have had a chance to get down there. And then the rest of the trustees will stay in here, and then we'll rotate. Marty will ding a bell, so every 10 minutes we will shift to our left to the next presentation.
Thank you.
No, we're not. And for everybody who's here, we're not assigning groups, so please feel free to go to wherever you would like.
Well, thank you all. for being here at this presentation. You have reached the counseling and guidance area, and we're very thankful that you're taking the time to learn more about counseling and guidance. Beyond the LCAP, though, I'd wish to share that the counseling and guidance is also ADA 504, site text registrars, the 2 paid grant, and our intervention counselors that support the suicide prevention education. But as we are tied to the LCAP, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So there's 2 metrics that are used in the LCAP to see how successful, if you will, the counselors are doing. One of them is from the Cal School. So it's either caring adult or connectedness. Here you'll see a graph of the caring adult. The reason why we don't have the connectedness on there is because there's no state average for the middle and high schools set for connectedness. So we thought caring adult would be in a very appropriate, so you can see where San Diego Unified answers, if you will, the students in grades 5, 7, 9, and 11, where they grade themselves with ideas of caring adults. Work to be done, and you'll see that there's a 5-year period that we've marked out.
This is a group of very diverse individuals coming together, from executive level cabinet members to paraeducators that serve students in the classroom, trying to build something that will help not only hire, retain, and show growth in the employees here for San Diego Unified. We start our sessions with the liberatory design cards to help us meet our different needs as we're building something new and complex, knowing that sometimes it's going to be messy and we have to be able to build trust and also attend to each other's healing as we're creating something messy. All of this is a really great experience because it's people wanting to create something that will keep people serving students ultimately. And I think the greatest part that I feel is that this group that's creating something like magical is doing it from their heart. Like, they genuinely want to build, heal, and support people in a way that I know I could rest assured and say that they want people to feel like they belong.
Teachly San Diego is San Diego Unified's Grow Your Own pipeline. And so it was designed to bring teachers in to San Diego Unified School District, and specifically paraprofessionals and classified staff. But if you want to become a teacher, we have a pathway, or we're creating pathways for you to become one for San Diego Unified, because we know that there's a need, right? And so we also want to reach out to diverse individuals, because representation matters. And that was a goal for LCAP, is to capture the diversity for students to become teachers. But we take everybody who wants to become teachers, okay? Also,
the relationship with RJP started even before I became a principal at the site, but we have really developed a strong partnership, and they have influenced our site greatly this year. From the beginning of the year, working with our staff to develop restorative focused lessons for all students to do in homeroom, also developing professional learning for our staff during our professional learning plan throughout the school year. They also are supporting our students specifically. So they have given us the tools. They have brought youth empowerment in. All our Spotlight students were invited to be part of youth empowerment groups each week for an 8-week program to develop and build their leadership. And this was very important, and with support from them to really harness and help the students that have high incidences or aren't on campus or low grades, that to learn to develop their power, right, and how to use it for good. We as a staff are approaching our Tier 3 development for professional learning with RJP practices. So Tier 1 is all staff understanding the foundations. Tier 2 is really looking at our practices for discipline and creating policies and systems that support in our restorative. And Tier 3 is training for the whole staff to learn how to restore harm once harm has been done. So that's where we are as a school site. I think it's changed. We got feedback from people that have been on our campus for years that the students are responsive. They're able to articulate their feelings. They're able to explain who and why they had a conflict, and they even are asking for restorative circles. They know that there's a conflict and they don't want to have a conflict. Please help us resolve it, and they're coming to us for that. So of course we still have incidences that occur, but we're able to work through it and restore and not have repeat offenders.
So the data that we wanted to share up here was about the impact during the 22-23 school year, but we wanted to go back before that. So you'll see some of the sites that had equity team facilitation and support in the red, and you can come on up or you can come up in a little bit. 21-22, we worked with site equity teams, and like Max said, there was an intense focus over the course of that year where we provided support and we encouraged facilitation. And so you'll see some of the data points like this school fosters appreciation for student diversity up here at 69. The next year, when we stepped back and kind of pushed the equity team to take on the work at their site without our support, that number now drops from 69 respecting diversity down to 38%. And so we found that being in space with the folks and giving them the content and the learning, yes, we're about it. We see the beauty of these students. We want to do more. And as soon as we stepped back, that number dropped dramatically. And so a lot of this data, and you can scan this here. Yeah, so this is the staff Healthy Kids California survey. And so you'll see a lot more data indicators here, but these are just some that we pulled to share. Just to show that, this informed that we really need to be doing more with the sites before we step back and just kind of push them into this work. So for what is changing, continuing, or being eliminated, we have a completely different model. We still have, as you'll see here, our content in the white that goes over the course of the school year, but we have a 3-year model now where we are giving, instead of one session of, let's say, racism and bias to a small group and then saying, go tell your staff, we're with that whole team for the entire year to build up their level of comfort in engaging in those political and difficult conversations, and we're connecting them with other educators so that they have an entire year to grow and build, and then they're going back to their school sites. Year 2, when they actually go back to their staff and their site, we are there with them providing coaching and support, and year 3, we are there to offer our facilitation, but they're also part of a cohort with other sites at that point where they're able to bounce ideas off of and get feedback on how things are going in different areas of our district.
Okay, we thank you so much for that lively discussion and poster presentation. I think we all really enjoyed that. I know I did. And now we're going to do a quick summary for each one of the presenters. I'm not sure how we want to start, but do you want to make your way up to the podium? Whoever is representing the different topics. Okay, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Ogle from Placement and Appeal. I'm a Family Services Assistant. Is that a little bit better? No, I talk really... Okay, you got it. Thank you. Something that we heard a lot today was how are we engaging with the staff at the schools, the teachers, the people that have that close contact with the parents and the families. That is definitely going to be a focus for us next year. We are going to be building out site teams, school attendance teams, so that we can connect with all of those touch points across the district. We also are really excited about some networking with SDCOE. We're going to take some information about a couple of schools that are partnering with their ICANN network, and we're going to expand that and share that data with the other schools in the district. Another question we had was, how are we knowing when we're going to send referrals to outside agencies or other departments within the district? We do partner with the community assessment team that's run by the probation office. It's funded by the probation office, but they have lots of mental health resources. So when we do identify that students need need more resources that are beyond the scope of what the district can provide, we do send those referrals. It's an easy process, and they connect with all of those parents on their own. So thank you for having us here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Okay, I think we're gonna have Sharon coming up next from counseling.
Check, check. Hi, I'm Sharon Rubalcava, the program manager for counseling and guidance, and we had stellar feedback, and that's it. No, I'm just so. Some ideas that came to light when we were discussing was how can we become more student focused? It seems like our work is adult led by us telling counselors with the ASCA goals and highlights. How is it that we know that that's right for the individual student that we're serving? So that gave us some, we're going to take that feedback back. Another question is the data that we're utilizing, how is it that we are utilizing it and to what extent? And we're using the data, for instance, the Cal Schools data, at a very high view. And what we plan and focus on doing is utilizing the dashboard that allows us to look at different groups of students to see how it is that we can identify to help those students that had answered with the Cal Schools anonymous survey, grades 5, 7, 9, and 11. And then the infographic that we did, that's a large part of our work that we share. That's our report card, if you will, for the schools counselors. We had positive feedback with that, due to the fact that there isn't always consistency in the counseling office, especially at the elementary school level, due to ratios. But thank you. Hopefully, we're changing that up with the school student to counselor ratio. And I think we received a lot of feedback of how our support is going to be changing to help and impact intentional work that counselors are doing to help a student individually, but holistically as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Izzy coming up.
I'm going to work with this. Okay. My name is Isel Martinez. I am a part of the Hire to Retire Pathways group. We had several different questions, and I loved all the different questions that we got. One of them was, what kind of data are you getting to show growth and retention? So we're going to take that feedback back and be able to get that data so that we could then better inform everyone about that information. The other thing that we got is because we use the liberatory design method in our work group, we want to be able to bring that back into the new hire space. So we're going to figure out a way to be able to cultivate that into our onboarding. We got the feedback of like, how do you do check-ins then with the people that are being hired or current employees? So we are making sure that with our cohort and other groups that we do periodic check-ins to do that. As well as our affiliation with Gallup and being able to do that work as well with the bigger group. Another big question that we got was how will we be able to create psychological safety? And that, on top of it being a part of growth and development, it's being able to create those spaces within our own school sites and communities to be able to build on that. And then the last thing is that we were asked, so what is this group and what are we creating? We're creating the base, the fundamental group, the fundamentals on how to hire someone, have them grow within the district, and then give them their pathway to retire. We're building the base for specifically right now paraeducators, but this is something that will be expanded to all employees, and their focus will then be tailored in that work. Thank you.
And we have Kimberly Moore coming up to talk about the Teach Lead program.
So in terms of Teach Lead, we had some really beautiful conversations and feedback that can support us as we move forward with this work. So one piece was, how do people find out about Teach Lead? Well, we have some amazing cards for you right at the table that you can take. That's one thing just to share teach lead, but it's a bigger question of how are we broadening this vision of teach lead across our system. And so how are we partnering with our students, our educators, our employees, community, and institutes of higher education to champion this vision of bringing back San Diego Unified students as teachers and leaders in our system. Another piece of feedback that we received from the Teach Lead San Diego group was around our monitoring and measurement practices. So thinking about what are data points that we can use to then monitor our impact of the strategies, the practices, the plans, and things that we put into place. So that is something that we are taking back to look at. And also thinking about what are the existing data points that are in the system that we can then draw from as we are designing goals of how we are bringing this vision to life. So thank you.
Next from Equity and Belonging.
Hey everyone, I'm Max. I work with youth advocacy and equity and belonging. We got some really good feedback from people, in particular about assessment. Like, how do we actually assess equity and belonging beyond California Healthy Kids survey for staff and students and family? How do we really measure that? What does it look like to see students and families and staff in a place where they feel like they belong and they can thrive, especially when this is something that is core to our values as a district? And why is equity and belonging a separate division, and why is not the whole district equity and belonging? Why is that not just in everything we do? And so I think we took a lot of that feedback, and we were thinking about ways that we can incorporate different sorts of survey data, but also just like, what does it look like? Students smiling, students leaning in, and how do we get more aggressive with, was one of the last comments. How do we get more aggressive with ensuring that all schools have supports that we can offer schools? And hopefully that's some of where everyone here comes in, and ensuring that we have a strong, robust department that can do that work. So yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrea Pino-Antle, a principal at CPMA, and I'm here with the program manager of the Restorative Justice Program. And we wanted to share some of the feedback that we received and questions. A lot of it was also around data and measuring. How do we measure the restorative circles that we're doing? How are we measuring, and how can we see the positives? And how do we shift the narrative of the restorative practices, how that looks and feels at our schools, and how can we share that journey with others? We also said, how are we connecting some of the questions with our spotlight students, and how is this impacting them? And we talked a little bit about how we're bringing in community partners to work directly with those students that have been identified by our district leadership that need that extra support to be seen and heard the way that they want to be seen and heard. And we talked about ways that we were doing that on our site campuses, and also feedback on how we are going to replicate that in other places, which we talked about how we're moving forward with that as well, with principal institutes as well. So anything else? No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for kind of summarizing each of those topics. And we're going to move on to public comment. We have 3, I believe, public testimony comments that are.
Yes, we have 3 speakers on LCAP goals 1 and 4. That would be Mary Ann Hawk, Lalia Alale, and Dan Niamanga. You each have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marianne Hawk, and I am one of the vice chairs of the GATE District Advisory Committee. And I'm here today representing the 3,000 seminar students and the 8,500 GATE cluster students in the district. I'm addressing Goal 4, which is about quality leadership, teaching and learning, and includes topics of teacher recruitment and retention, leader development, and the role of area superintendents. Gifted students are atypical learners who have complex special needs, which is why we identify them. They're different and they need alternative education in order to thrive. They need more depth, complexity, challenge, and more social emotional supports. They need more interconnected themes and concepts, more project-based learning, and more metacognitive thinking and skills. They need teachers who are specially trained and GATE certified. These are a cross-cutting group, and I like to call them the gifted plus. Gifted plus special ed, gifted plus ELL, low income, Black, Hispanic, LGBTQ, etc. In our district, GATE is disappearing. As gifted students are sprinkled across classrooms and dispersed into general education classes, there's an even greater need for all educators to understand them and meet their needs. If you're expecting their needs to be met in mixed ability classrooms, then there's a need for educators to have specialized training about these atypical and neurodiverse learners. I hope this will be taken into consideration when hiring and training teachers. I also hope there will be more support for professional learning communities to support GATE teachers who tell us that they feel isolated and don't currently have a way to be able to interact and learn together. Re-leadership. I hope that the special needs of our gifted and twice exceptional students is taken into account by all of our new leaders in the district as well. I'd like to hear the candidates for area superintendent asked about their commitment to gifted and 2E students and hear them acknowledge their special needs. Because when we talk about serving the needs of all students in our district, that also includes the gifted plus. So please don't forget them. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Lalia Alali. I am the DLAC chair. I represent about 12,000 English learners in our district. I will be speaking about discrimination. As we all know, like our goal within the district is to hold our student to a high expectation. But at the same time, we know that discrimination is one of the main obstacles for our student. The other thing, like I have seen the Board of Education in several months, like presenting, talking about this issue. However, my question is, are we holding all students at the same recognition, at the same level of recognition? So, which means, like, are we including every student in our district? Knowing that we have 60 languages spoken in our district, which means we have about 60 or maybe less ethnic groups. Are we talking about these groups? Are we highlighting their needs and their support in our board meetings rather than treating them as a whole? When we talk about the English learners, it bothers me that we put them in only one specific groups while we have 60 languages and 60 ethnic groups. So how can we make sure that we are including everyone in the conversation? The other thing that I want to share with you is when the board passes a resolution in support of a specific group, it makes me think as a DLAC chair, how about the students who don't have representation among the board members? Are they seen and are they heard? If not, and clearly they are not, so how to make them seen and heard? And I want also like to suggest to the board to pass a resolution for the students who are not seen and heard, so we can uplift these voices as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dan Nyamanga. I'm the PSRO. I work with the parents and students and community members in CTH area, Crawford and Hoover clusters. and intentionally to include the more than 20 language groups that we do have within our community in the discussion on how to shape and also support our kids through education process. And I'm here to talk about the goal 1, cultivating inclusive anti-racism and restorative schools in our district and our district. First, I would like to acknowledge this format for today. A board workshop is how it should be, how it should have been before. And thanks, Kali, for and your leadership and your team for making it this way. I would like to go to the organizing college that you went to so that I can be able to reflect this sometime. But by acknowledging that, I think it is also important to make sure that as we move towards the next chapter next year, how do we, how does it look in practice when we talk about inclusivity and anti-racism at our school side? Is it like it's good to say it when you are at the district headquarters? It looks good, it sounds good when you read it from outside, but how does it look in practice when you are at the school sites? Because those are some of the questions that me as a community member, I go through with parents every day. And the responses that we get, and then we share them with all the different departments, the school sites, are not reflective of how this goal is represented in our district. And so another question that we should be asking ourselves as we move forward, those who are leading this particular goal, work of this particular goal, how do we make sure that it's in practice? How is that student, that one student that is left out, how are they feeling this goal? How is that parent and that family and that community that is not recognized or mentioned, how are they feeling that this is a goal that we collectively as a district will want to, are pursuing? And it's a difficult question, but it must be done when we should do it as a district going forward. And also, I would like also this particular goal to be expanded to other avenues of communication, of engaging our communities. It's not easy to engage our diverse community, and that's a fact that we all have to live with. I do it every day. It's fun. I love it. It's not easy, but it's doable. And also acknowledge the work that we have done over the years, especially when we're engaging our Crawford and Hoover cluster community. We have had over the years all the inclusive and collaboration with our district department. The family engaged department have been there with the community all these years, making sure that our voices that are diverse as you can think, many languages, difficult to have people out in a meeting. We have more than 10 languages in one meeting, but it's doable when we collaborate and we are intentional about it. And that's how it has been. For this particular goal, I think this is one of the areas that as a district we have really achieved and moving to the right direction, but we should not stop there. We should also continue to make sure that things that are working, like for example, the collaboration that the family engagement department made sure that our two clusters are working together to bring the diverse community together. That one is highlighted and also uplifted and strengthened and replicated in the different areas that our communities are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And now we're going to open up to trustees who might have any questions. We're just going to limit this to the LCAP goals 1 and 4. Yes, questions from the trustees.
For 1 and 4
Yep.
specifically?
Yep. Go ahead, Trustee Barrera.
Thanks. Through the format. So again, we heard it from the speakers. I want to thank Lamont and Fabi and Callie and everybody who put this together, because this format is actually living our values, and we need to have more opportunities to engage together as a community in this way, rather than board meetings where we sit up there and we talk at people and people talk at us, and it's not, that's so much of what I think this conversation is about, and the superintendent, framed this for us this morning, is the existing definition of what a school should be, what students should achieve. And I think Max, mentioned this in what the structure that's been built over decades and decades is not only inconsistent, but often against the vision that Lamont laid out for us this morning. So, I mean, when I went through the binder and read sort of, the summary of our existing LCAP, I got nothing out of that. And I don't mean, because I know that there's a lot of work put in, but the reason I think a lot of us feel that way is because it doesn't reflect who we are and what we care about. It's complying with, a format that has been established for us. And I think a lot of the conversations that we all had in all the different stations was, we need to create our own picture. So what is it that we care about? What are we doing to try to get there? And how do we know if we're making progress? And that's all about the work that I think collectively, represented in this room and our broader community, we can work together to create a very clear picture that allows us to know where we're getting there, where we're not, how we make progress, which is so much more powerful a set of data points than CASP scores and Healthy Kids surveys and all these data points that were required to present. So what we're identifying together is a vision for what school is that's very different than definitions that have already existed. And that means we have the extra work and responsibility. If we're going to say that's what school is, if we're going to say school is about equity, belonging, and thriving, we have a responsibility to create systems and create metrics that allow us to know whether we're moving that vision. And we can't wait for somebody to do it. One of the things that struck me that Izzy said was, when you build that sort of psychological safety, when you build trust, you don't have to wait for people to be told what to do. People step up. So in Izzy's case, she was talking about the role of paras, and a para doesn't have to, Izzy's the union president, and her, what her message to her members is, you don't have to wait for a principal to tell you what to do. If you see what needs to happen with your kids, step up. But that can only happen when there's that trust and there's that psychological safety. We as a district need to step up and not wait for other people to tell us what we need to define as success and how we need to measure it. We've got a different definition, which means we have to create a different picture. And when we create that picture and we create that picture together, I think it just becomes so much more clear, the point that Lamont keeps emphasizing, that if I'm a teacher in a classroom, or I'm a para, or I'm a principal, but I'm on the ground, now I know what I'm trying to achieve because there's a clear picture there. If it's just these sort of alien data points, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. So it's our job, and as we heard from our restorative team, which I think is particularly relevant, we need to create our own story, create our own narrative, not let other people define what restorative practices are or aren't, or any of the other work that we're doing. So how do we create our own picture? How do we engage people in being part of creating that picture, understanding where they are in relation to the picture of what we want, And how do we tell our story? It seems like that's so this is year 3 of, existing 3. But by year 3 of the next LCAP, that's what I think we want to have. That's what we want to be able to present to our community. And this is an amazing start. And again, thank you to everybody who's come together to make this day happen.
Trustee Whitehurst Payne.
Thank you, President Bassa. I thank you, Richard, for focusing on that. The message that the superintendent started off with today about yesterday evening's graduation, those are our kids throughout the continuum. And my attention went to that's the 5% that we didn't address and that we're not addressing. They will continue to come through that continuum for the continuation school. Continuing education is the way I believe you all put it now. But the bottom line is we've got to have a major paradigm shift in terms of what we're thinking about and how we're thinking about it. I really love that everybody is saying what we had before the pandemic, it doesn't work now. The system is broken. How do we put it back together? Do we just put it back together by gluing up what we had and try to go back to the old paradigm? No. This is a time for us to look at the 5% as well as the others and put together the kind of model like you're talking about. And I think Callie and to the group, you all did a great job of just making it boring sitting, listening to I'm old enough to say exactly what I'm thinking, so you'll have to forgive me. But this was wonderful because we got to ask the questions right on the spot and to challenge you to think to the next level. What are you doing? I've seen some of your work out there. Now, explain that to me in this context of what you're talking about and how you're going to change it and what you're going to do. That was beautiful because at every station, we had that opportunity to do that. And I even loved it that, where is she? Blessing asked a question. She said, I'm looking at this chart and these data, but, and I'll let her tell her own story, but it was beautiful to see her stepping up to say, this isn't matching up. Why do you have this? And how can we make this better? And so on. So I think we're already on the pathway to doing that.
I'm going to invite her to share her story.
Yes, her question.
Is this on? I never sit up here, so it's different for me, guys. Sorry. So when we were taking a look at all the different stands, it stood out to me at the counseling booth how in the graph for caring adult relationships for middle and high school, the highest rate of caring adults was in 2020 when all students were at home with their parents for COVID, of course. But coming back into 2021, 2022, and 2023, the chart took a drastic downplay. So I was questioning what could we do to bring that back up within caring adults, even though that they're back on campus, and how could we care to those students within those changes? Thank you.
Thank you, and the young shall lead us. The children shall lead us. Thank you.
I was just getting caught up in that comment, so thank you. Trustee Pedersen.
I don't know. Am I live? Okay. I don't know what. I haven't looked past this in the agenda, so I don't know when the appropriate time to share the thoughts are. But one of the things, the recurring thoughts that I've had today is in terms of belonging and equity, and I think this echoes what all the trustees have said, in particular what Richard just said about what a school is the first question is, what are you belonging to? I mean, we talk about belonging all the time, but we don't talk as often about what is this thing we belong to. And and I think, we come at this from our own personal perspectives, and I this is all part of our moral journey, and I pray to a form of holism that's just built into my mind that you discover as you go along, and I see my kids discovering it to their chagrin sometimes and confusion, and part of what happens for me is things that are in service of the whole, I support and I'm very tolerant of, and even if I don't like it very much, and things that I think are not supportive of the whole and in service of the whole, I can get snappy about. And I watch my kids trying to understand that because I don't understand it quite myself. And my colleagues probably see it in closed session where it's like I'll be very severe about certain things and then super permissive about it. And we're all trying to be ourselves, you know, but that's, and so one of the things that when Richard says what a school is, and Lamont talks about belonging, what I'm thinking throughout this whole thing is, and now I'm imposing on you, is, you know, the school is a particular institution. We think of it as something very special and magical, but it's an institution like other institutions. And we have a class system, we have an economic system, we have a criminal justice system, we have all kinds of social institutions. And I think what a lot of people are getting at today is, I ran for office and I had to memorize the 7 LCAPs. They cut the world in weird ways. I was like, why are we cutting it this way? I don't understand it. These are all really long. They're not very cognitively salient for me. I just straight up memorized it, you know, because KUSI might ask the question, and that's like, so, so we're clearly all wrestling with the fact that like this is a document that as it currently stands, it's CDE facing, it's Sacramento facing, it's not serving us as a roadmap, but I think that we're all hungering to really, as a board, as a district, turn and tackle that fundamental question is, what is the whole we are asking these students to become part of? And when I think of, I'm sorry, get a little choked up. When I think about equity, I think about empowering children and staff and families and parents to be a part of the whole, to be the most, or whatever that term most is, it's not a question of excellence, but to be most part of the whole that they're able to and that they desire to be part. And when I see an inequity, I feel it really as, like if I see, I'll just be honest, I'm in closed session and there'll be someone with, I'm not sharing anything in closed session, hypothetically, some child with 30 infractions, and in 4th grade, their grades dipped and they never came up, and now they're in middle school. They've got D's and F's, they've got multiple assaults, and you're looking at this kid and I think, wow, this society, because we are an institution, but most of what's driving that child to not be the part of the whole that they deserve to be is the system of which the socioeconomic context of education. We need to take as much responsibility as possible. But I'm like, this is ridiculous. This child was never given a chance to be a part of the whole. I go home to my kids and they are given the society, the class system, the economic system, the culture, everything is giving them the opportunity to be the most, a part of the whole that is most consistent with who they are. And these children we see in closed session, the children you see in special education, the children who are struggling are spotlight students. Lots of even students that aren't spotlight students, but they're just not being given that opportunity to be that part of the whole. That hits me. And so as I would love us, as we go through this process of governance and the LCAP, to work together with our students, with our staff, the leadership team, with the board, with the community. What is this institution? And how does this institution, for me, how does this institution function to allow all of our students and all of our staff to become the part of the whole that they feel is consistent with who they are and is fulfilling to them?
Anyone else? And go ahead, Trustee Catoriano.
Thank you. I don't have all that much to say. I just want to say thank you to Callie for organizing the system. I think all of us really recognize the value of back and forth conversation. When we talk about belonging and equity, when I was looking through the LCAP, when Zach made us read the LCAP as part of our onboarding, I looked at this and well, I'm sure that there was so much work that went into it. That is not who we are. When I looked at it, it did not have the soul of San Diego Unified. It was a document that, as Trustee Pedersen said, is Sacramento facing, is County Board of Education facing. It's not people facing. And again, I just want to thank the culture that we've made in here of collaboration, and I really want to thank that. I also wanted to highlight one thing that I really noticed just across the board. Across all the different presentations, we highlighted one specific data source, and that's the California Healthy Kids Survey. And I really just wanted to dive deeper into the way that, not just the way you're using data, but the way that data is collected. I've said this many times, but I think and I'm happy to say it many more times, the California Healthy Kids Survey is an autopsy. It's not what we're using it for. And I think the sad fact is that we don't have a replacement for it, and so we're using it in places that it shouldn't be used. I had some amazing discussions about other opportunities to talk directly with staff. When we talk about humanizing our system, we also need to look at humanizing what our system is based on, and that's data. So I want to thank all the presenters that talked about the ways that they're looking to move away from simply just surveys and having one-on-one conversations with individuals. That's incredibly, incredibly important. And I want us to really be cognizant about the role that surveys play within our systems. It's one of the role that surveys play within our data systems are one of I'm not sure I can put this into words, but I'll give an example. The way that we should be using data is not to identify if a new program is going wrong. It's to find gaps and look from there. It's a starting point. When you look at things like chronic absenteeism isn't something, it's not because of something that we did a year ago, 6 months ago. And while that's important, it's things that we did 3-4 years ago. It's about things that we did during and before COVID. It's an autopsy, and I just want to remind us to be cognizant of that. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Trustee Hazen.
Yes, I want to echo what everyone said about how good it felt to be able to really engage in meaningful dialogue and to have conversations and dig in. So really appreciate all of the work that went into this and the intentionality. I think for me, one of the things I noticed is there are lots of bright spots. And I think what I'm wondering is, are they on purpose or on accident? And it seems like it's somewhere in between. And I heard a lot of where great things are happening. There are site leaders who are opting in or specific staff members who are opting in. And the thing I wonder, to the point of how we use data, is if we've identified spotlight students, how are we using the data about who those students are and where they are to ensure that their sites are participating in these things that we know work, that we know achieve the goals that students seek and want for themselves and that we want for them. And so I'm curious about how we can be more intentional where this work is happening. I think also to Matthew's point, Trustee Toriano and Pedersen, I keep thinking a lot about upstream interventions. So much of what we're thinking about and what we're talking about are students often who are at this sort of tail end of their educational experience. And what would happen if we started thinking about from the day students, and I know you can't even see it on the screen, but that tiny black text under students is supported by their families. If from the day that students and families entered our system, we were really intentional about all of this work, about the restorative work, about reducing chronic absenteeism, about belonging, about equity, and started measuring the right things then and doing the right work then, I think we would see different results. And so I just encourage all of us to really think about what needs to happen upstream, because one of the things we know and the research bears out is you're going to get a much greater return on your investment when we invest in, say, a 4-year-old than later on, which isn't to say we don't do the work in high school, but how do we think really across the spectrum of a student's experience? And I will say again, I think I said at the last board meeting, I'm really curious about how we can think about and measure self-efficacy. I spoke about it at our last board meeting within the context of how we measure that in students. But what I'm hearing, and one of the things I heard in terms of the hire to retire work with paras and really all staff, and to the point that Trustee Barrera made around, right, like, you don't have to ask me. I know I can do it, and I can step in and I can identify, where I fit in and do the work. What about the self-efficacy of staff, and how are we doing on that front?
All right, thank you. Trustee Whitehurst-Payne?
Just one point. Earlier at another board meeting, I pointed out about in Kentville, and today with the, what group was that? John's group. They are, yes, placement in pills. They're making some changes, but that's the kind of school model we need to start looking at. They're doing all the things you articulated. They are doing it at that school. I knew Natasha, is she here? Yes, because somehow or another that cluster has put her there, and she is making a difference for the second highest homeless population in the city. They are figuring it out as a school community, stopping at every point with all the supports from the community, churches and businesses and everything else, parents coming in. That's the kind of model we push down to the schools and start allowing them to do their work. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, Trustee Nepomuceno?
Firstly, I'd like to join my colleagues in celebrating Callie, Fabi, and Lamont, all those who have made today's event possible. It truly is beautiful to see this cultural shift in what defines professional goal setting and how we function as not only a board, but as a school district. With that, something that I noticed throughout the presentations was this idea from shifting from being reactive to proactive. And an example of this was particularly from the Equity and Belonging group, who spoke about the school site equity teams. And when I asked about who they envisioned being a part of those teams, something they emphasized is this idea of not rushing. I think that when it comes to team building or new organizations and projects, there is a tendency to rush, have them completed and started initially. But something that stood out to me from their group is first starting with site admin, counselors, and teachers, and then bringing students, parents, and community, and embracing that these school site teams will look different at every school, and that is completely okay, but really allowing schools to be in control when it comes to assessing the needs of their communities they're serving.
Mm-hmm.
Classified also.
Yeah. And I would just like to add, we're running about 30 minutes late, so I want to kind of start lunch, but to kind of wrap this up, in looking across all these topics and also the ones that we're going to be discussing this afternoon, I mean, they're not in their own silos, as we know. These are all overlapping, and I see really a trend, I guess, a trend throughout all of them is really communication and connection, with our communities and with our students. And I think that's what is really coming out to me. There's just really a pattern across the board of all of these. There's what we're looking at the foundation, and also I really enjoy. Thank you to Kaylee and all the presenters today. Having that a little bit more informal kind of conversation, I think, helps to bring things out, because sometimes, as Dr. Whitehurst-Payne was saying, being up on the dais, you kind of, you hear things, but you're not really connecting them with specific, what we're doing. It doesn't, kind of connect, or it's not communicating to me. But I really enjoy this idea of the small conversations, and I think it just makes people more relaxed and a little more comfortable. with being able to provide that information. And so I'd like to thank the group for that. And also, I think that also speaks to when we were talking in the group with John about the chronic absenteeism, our families, when we're going out and we discuss this to our families directly and talking to them, it's the same thing. You know, we're making that connection. What can we give to you? And really a direct connection and a personal connection, showing that we care, showing that we want those students in school. So I'm just seeing that kind of across the board here as we're talking today, and also what we're talking about with regards to connecting with our students and our families. So with that, are we? All right, so we're good? All right, I think we're gonna break for lunch, and we're gonna try to get back on track. We're supposed to start again at 1:15. Can we push that to maybe 1:30, just so we have time for lunch? All right, 1:30, okay. 1:45? Okay.
I have a hard stop at 4.
Yeah.
How about in the middle, 1:35? That way 30 minutes? Yes? Okay. Okay, 1:35. See you back at 1:35.
Perfect, thanks, Bobby.
Hello, good afternoon, and I want to say I wanted to make a little joke about a 30-minute duty-free lunch. I mean, we took more time than what our teachers have, right, of eating, so I always like to get that concept in since they're really busy. But I wanted to center us into the afternoon and say a couple of things. So I wanted to first say thank you to everyone for the grace that this design requires. This is a new design, and so I am also already like writing things down for feedback, meaning like the space, right? The space and the setup. I don't want to have my back to you ever again. So how next year when we do this and we continue to build our concentric circle model, how do we set up? What's the space that we use? And then we also work on our timing. I understand that. I think we need to improve it. So thank you for the grace. The second thing that I want to add, though, is that there's a lot of beauty here today. And so some of the beautiful pieces that I know, I'm standing here both proud, but also really just recognizing like the strength of the colleagues that I share, and I'm going to say standing shoulder to shoulder with them, is I love the sharing of different voices and leadership. I love that we heard from everyone across the system leading this work. And I keep thinking of like, how do we build the collective? Well, you first have to meet the collective, right? And get to know who your colleagues are and who the folks are in the system. So it's a way of like not only sharing leadership, but also sharing voice, knowing who our colleagues are, and then seeing that everyone holds not only the power and authority, but also the responsibility for our students. And I want to also thank their level of engagement in this work. Now, with this concentric circle model, it's all of us, including all of us here in the room. And so I do have one ask, and that is for everyone that's participating, awareness of time, because I know time is getting in the way, and sometimes we want to keep talking, and then there's another group waiting. So just spatial awareness, situational awareness, and time. Everyone, please. But ultimately, I just want to say thank you, because I'm really proud of the work that everyone is not only sharing, relaying, explaining, but most importantly, owning. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Fabi. And Kelly, are you going to split us up again, or are we at that point? Is there anything else?
Yes. So I think we can do the same, start in the same rooms that we started in last time. So through Trustee Nepomuceno down to Pedersen in room 5, and then the rest will start in here again.
It'd be great to be with other people to hear different perspectives.
All right. We'll go ahead and get started then.
So a quick question, just Trustee Hazen asking if we can maybe do half of that group and half of this group. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Trustee Hazen, who would you like to go with to room 5? To room 5.
This is like the dating game now.
With anyone, so I'll go with anyone.
Okay. Trustees Quitoriano and Pedersen will stay in this room. Trustee Hazen and Trustee Barrera will go
Room 5.
over to room 5.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so Sharon and Trustee Whitehurst Payne, Nepomuceno, Hazen, Barrera, room 5. All others stay here.
Thank you and enjoy.
All right. Welcome. We're the science department. Nice to meet you. Zoe Randall is part of the STEAM team. My name is Tali Lerner. I'm representing secondary science. We're working on LCAP Goal 2, and our main focus is supporting and creating resources for teachers to adopt NGSS and to change the teaching practices of science. The biggest things we've been working on are trying to first learn more about the needs and the diverse needs of different schools and different clusters. A lot of our work in the past year has been around developing curriculum and resources to support our teachers in shifting their teaching practices. So in secondary science, that's going to every school site and every science department meeting, identifying where the limitations they're experiencing are, and coming up with solutions from cooler science equipment to engage more kids, to have them feel more like they're doing what real scientists do, or partnering them with researchers at UCSD so kids can go to the labs and work on cutting edge science and not just science from the book that was done in the 80s and has already been proven wrong. At the same time, working with a lot of our teachers about shifting their perceptions about science education to be more inclusive and have science be less of a stop for kids and more of something that brings them in. Because we know that's a struggle we have, especially in the secondary environment, and Zoe can say more about elementary.
Yeah, do you want to finish the struggle that you had though in secondary?
No, I mean, the struggle is that kids were not feeling that science was pulling them in, that science lessons were not as exciting as inviting as we wanted them to be, and were more of something that holds kids back.
Something I heard, just to add on to what Tali was saying, was that earlier there was this idea that how can we be more proactive in our strategies to support students earlier. So as working on the STEAM team, I'm representing a team of 3 who have been working to write curriculum. So our approach was a little different when the initiative began. It was how do we support as many schools as possible with actually getting the elementary science teaching and the professional learning up to speed so that teachers in elementary school could gain those mindsets that Tali was talking about. To be able to have the self-efficacy, to teach science, and to understand that science is holistic. And especially in the elementary school, you understand that teachers are teaching all content areas. So STEAM is really an intervention and a support to develop students as scientists to see themselves as engineers, technologists, artists, mathematicians, and to engage those early on so they don't fall down the unfortunate, stops, gaps, or barriers that, come up. So we're here just to represent and share that science may not be seen as just, one thing, but many things. Our connections with other departments has really helped us build those connections across the central office through cross-content literacy to ethnic studies, bringing in the supportive practices that we're learning as a district and the values that we want to see. We want to see equity, belonging, and thriving in the science classroom and to help teachers and students see themselves that way. So that's definitely what we're working towards. So.
On defining what blended learning looks like in our classrooms and what it looks like for a teacher to have a student be at one device with 2 kids, or to pause and have them stand up and go write something on stickies and on the poster, and to communicate and to truly blend that online learning with the instructional practices that we know are good. So we also have our the micro-credentials. We have micro-credentials in Google Classroom, Seesaw, and Canvas, as well as formative assessments. We work very closely, like I said, with secondary science and math, and with a lot of the content area resource teachers in the district for implementing our technology tools and in the right way. Here's just a couple examples. These are our little Ozobots. They're little robotics, and the students actually, in kindergarten, they program these. Let's see if this guy wants, he might be a little, the kindergartners program these, right? And so they're actually drawing their code, and the kindergartners are involved in a project-based learning unit where this is they learn slow and fast, and their final project is a project-based learning. They had just completed a unit on weather. And after the weather unit, they do this coding unit on how robots can help people. And they talk about Ugo, who's been in this horrible storm, and he can't get to a grocery store or to check on his mother. So the kindergartners program the Ozobot to go to the store and to help Ugo save his family and be support. And kind of that idea about how robotics and things are there to help us. So that's kind of the kindergarten all the way to the programming. Those are some pictures of our ambassadors program, teachers coming together to learn and have fun. And it's been a great year. We have a lot of work to do though as well.
Hello and welcome. I'm Georgia Figueroa, Instructional Coordinator for Standards-Based Learning. Liz Perry, who is the Director of Instructional Innovation, works side by side with me, unable to be here today, but I just wanted to mention her name. Sarah Matthews. Do you want to? So thank you for being here. We just wanted to overview briefly our poster. Standards-based learning is a framework in which we're really targeting clarity, consistency, accuracy, and equity when it comes to teaching, learning, reporting, and grading. It's really broad, and there's lots of details within each bucket of work, which we call our continuum wheel. I'm just going to plug it here if you want to take a look later. And it really overviews, starting with the grounding in the why. Like, why is standards-based learning equitable? Why are we moving towards this as a district? All the way through teachers designing assessments that are standards aligned and giving feedback and getting self-reported feedback from students on their growth and trajectory. So just to overview, we have a few areas in which we're looking at those different pillars. We have our universal resources. So these are resources that are available to all of our educators, all of our administrators. We have websites, which have now timed out, but we have websites that house all of these resources. So for educators, they're able to access proficiency scales. They're able to access lots of different things. We have a family website that has videos, it has resources for families, translations so that they're able to read it in many languages around what is standards-based learning, what are we trying to achieve, who are we trying to serve, and how are we doing that, and to really celebrate it. This work is complex, and it's challenging site to site, their needs, and trying to honor, because standards-based learning is really a way that we can honor students, their needs, their diversity, and leverage their assets. And I really do feel that standards-based learning is a celebratory way for students to go through their learning journey, highlight what they're doing really well, what they're proud of, being able to identify themselves with their teacher support. Like, these are the areas that I can grow, and here's how I'd like to do it.
And really thinking about our core values of equity, belonging, and thriving is really what we are about, and thinking about students' future potential and how are we going to help them get to their future career, future potential, and reach that. And really designing our pathway program so that students can be exposed to a pathway before they leave us out of high school. So this has really taken a shift in the way we think about these courses. Instead of students just choosing one course here or there, we've shifted to this idea around pathways and really informing our school sites, our counselors, our administrators, to think about what pathways they're offering to students and encouraging students to go through an introductory level to an intermediate to an advanced level. And along that way, we've maintained a commitment that every pathway would have opportunities for students to take honors level courses, to earn college credit through their courses, and then to actually have work experiences, so work-based learning along the way as well. So thinking about guest speakers in their area, in their field, in that field that they're studying, and then leading up to internships. And we have schools that have whole classes that by their senior year are able to actually get an internship in a hospital or in a health setting or with an engineering company or in an area related to what they have been studying. So the impact and how we're looking at what impact we had over 22-23 is really looking at our enrollment, the numbers of students that are enrolled. And this can be enrolled in more than one course at a time and more than one pathway at a time. So some students have the opportunity to complete more than one. The idea is not that once they choose an area and progress through it, that's the career that they must go into, but rather that it's exposed students to a potential career that then they could then identify what it is that they like, what are their interests, what do they want to pursue, pursue. Maybe they want to apply something they learned to another career area. So that is something that we look at.
So when we talk about ethnic studies, we're really talking not just about the content, but about the pedagogy, how we teach, right? Those are the most important things. We're looking at the histories and perspectives of people of color, right? Those minoritized people, but also making room for all students to learn in these classes, right? So we focus on those minoritized perspectives, but all identities are welcome and explored in the classroom, and that's vital. So what we're going to be talking about today is how we go about making these happen. And with that, I turn it over to Ricky.
So we have a lot written, right? And so it goes to show you how comprehensive we're trying to be with this LCAP, with our LCAP goals. And when we're talking about LCAP goals, I want you to think of two lifts: Ethnic Studies for All, which is it's an initiative around how do we provide and weave ethnic studies through all courses, all grade levels. And then the other one is really focused on our graduation requirement, our ethnic studies graduation requirement. And so we have energy and efforts and a strategic implementation plan that really rolls into implementation science around how do we roll this out district-wide, right? In a huge district where there's going to be folks that are like, yes, and there's going to be folks that are like, we have other priorities, right? And so we're very continually mindful of this. So when we look at ethnic studies for all, ethnic studies graduation requirement, I want to, and both actually, what I'm going to do is put them together. We have a professional development plan. How do we bring in our educators to build skill sets, knowledge, and dispositions? Because we realize that that is critical to providing an ethnic studies experience for students. And so we have very small things we call collectives, where it's an hour. Individuals come in and they get community as well as an example of what ethnic studies could look like. We have a tiered micro-credential program where individuals will spend 2 days at a time with a community building their knowledge, disposition, skill sets. We call them competencies as well with ethnic studies. We have site-based PD where a school site will bring us in, an ELA department, an HSS department, or sometimes both together, and we'll want to work to have a contextualized professional development experience. We also recently did a summit where we had keynotes, we had workshops, and that's all part of our PD plan. We've seen a huge progressive shift of the amount of PDs we've done prior years to this past year. So we've been incredibly busy.
So the Literacy Acceleration Team, we are a team that focuses on supporting strong Tier 1 supports as well as supplemental support for our students in UTK through 2nd grade. So the students that we serve are in both dual language and straight English programs. So we wanted to show you all these posters that are purposely and mindfully very interactive. And the reason why is because we really want to share one of our core values, which is transmitting joy through reading. So I hope that you guys can see that joy through our work here. We have a QR codes in your handouts as well for you to hear from our students, our teachers, our parents, and we were also on the news. So you have a lot of options to hear all the people that partake in our program. Something really important I wanted to share is that this year, reading support teachers have supported 2,286 students this year alone. And within those 2,286 students, we've seen them grow 6.8 reading levels, Fountains and Pinnell reading levels so far in the 6-week cycles that we have here. So something that I want to just put into perspective, typically a student in UTK through 2nd grade moves up 4 reading levels for the entire school year. So the students that are in our program are considerably showing great growth. And that's something that we're really excited and really proud about. And here's our impact. As I previously mentioned, we serve 30 schools in both dual language programs and straight English. I serve at Adams, and Adams is a dual language school, so I serve students in both Spanish and English reading. And as you see in our qualitative data here, we sent out a survey to parents, and the survey was asking a simple question: has your child's reading improved this year? And parents overwhelmingly responded with a 95.5 yes. They have seen that in their child, and that's something that we wanted to highlight for our kids. Furthermore, that mirrors what we're seeing each reading cycle. Our reading cycles are 5 weeks long. So as you can see here, 83% of the students that participate in our reading cycles move up 1 to 2 reading levels every 5 weeks. That's tremendous growth that we're seeing for our students. And if we zoom in a little bit closer and we see our identified student groups, they are making growth parallel and the same as our total number of students. So we're definitely seeing that our students are constantly growing and benefiting tremendously from this work. But I can show data and give you all this information, but we also have Ms. Betancourt here, who is a teacher who I work with. I pushed into her classroom. We looked like this in her room where we each had our table, and she's going to share her story.
Welcome to Communications, LCAP goal number 6. So this school year, we committed to strengthening our engagement with staff, students, and families to promote equity and access to the essential information that will allow students to thrive. And we did that through a number of adaptive and sort of technical changes. One is around language, right? We know that if we're going to meet families where they are, that means communicating sometimes in their native language. So this school year, we very quietly launched the first Spanish language version of our eBlast. No promotion, and we are at about a 50% open rate, which is pretty phenomenal for eBlast. Why is it important? Because, you know, it gives information to families the way they want it. Similarly, this school year, for the first time, all district-wide family communications were sent in 5 languages: English, Spanish, Somali, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. You know, when I first got hired, we were lucky to get Spanish sometimes, and, you know, sometimes it was a couple days later. And so why is it important? It reaches families the way they want to be reached and increases their access to information that could, you know, help their students thrive at school. We've been talking to our principals about adding languages for their communication tools like School Messenger. For the same reason, we also understand that our friends in IT have a really interesting translation app that they're working on. They piloted about 14 schools, which basically allows you, through PowerSchool, it allows a teacher to text a parent in English, and then it instantly gets translated to whatever that family's native language is, and the family can then respond in their language, instantly translates to English. Very interesting, and I think they're poised to expand that soon. So we're eager to learn more about that as well. We have been doing a lot more student-centered communications. That means students speaking at press conferences, in our press releases, in our stories, at our events. Again, we are going to that concentric circle model and reminding ourselves and our audiences why we're here, and it's for our students. We also started a few series in the eBlast that promote students. And one of the goals we got from Zach Patterson, our first student board member, was to start emailing students directly. Sounds really simple, but it took a lot of time and a lot of collaboration with IT. And so we cracked that code, and we are now able to directly email high school students information about internships and scholarships. Not us, frankly, what it did was allow Lorena Ford to implement, to execute her student engagement initiative. Lorena, how has that impacted your work?
All right, if anyone can take their seats, we're going to get started. We're just going to do a quick summary for each of the LCAP goals that we just discussed. All right, if Sarah from CCT is available, if you want to come up and just give a quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was so great to be able to connect with people in this format and be able to hear feedback and comments and ideas. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I want to share just a few highlights and from the feedback. So first, the idea around, what is our goal? And we really want to impact students and their future potential and their future careers. So how do we make sure we're measuring? We measure now that students are completing pathways in an area, but are we measuring that they are continuing into that career, or do we know that information? So wanting to add that into, and it's a challenging task to follow students after they leave us, but it's something that we want to embrace because we feel that that's going to really inform our work, to really, reach out and see, are we really making a difference in what we're exposing students to while they're with us, and then what they're pursuing in their futures. The other piece that really appreciated was we implemented district-wide a platform for students' college and career exploration called Zello, and it was really received positively. It's been received positively by students and allowing students to learn about themselves earlier, so actually they can begin in elementary. And we had some conversation about what does it look like in elementary? What are students actually doing? But they get a chance to explore a town and see, what are the careers in that town, and just start thinking about who they are, what interests them, and what might match to them, and then continue that in middle school and high school. It integrates our career exploration, our college exploration, college application, and some of the feedback was around parents and how can we increase the awareness that parents have around this, because it's valuable information that students are able to get exposed to and explore and use for their future decisions. So how do we increase that awareness with parents? And parents can have access. There's a parent portal. They can see what their students have done. So we want to, that was great feedback as well. Career and college symposium. So this past year, 2022-23, we hosted a career and college symposium. We were able to host students from several schools, up to about 200 students, but it's something we want to expand going forward. So as we were talking about continuing that, some of that feedback included where did we host it? And we hosted it at a great venue. We were at the UCSD Park and Market building, but the idea around possibly hosting on a college campus so that students, when they're there, and we started talking about the impact of students just being on a college campus to things that then they might connect to what they want for themselves. So thinking about that for the future is how can we, expand that, get more students exposed and experiencing that, and then hosting it on a college campus that might further inspire students to pursue their goals and future careers. And then we also talked about pre-apprenticeship programs. So right now, internships is one of our goals, and pre-apprenticeships, and how can we expand the pre-apprenticeships? We know that there are labor groups out there who want to support our students in pre-apprenticeship programs, and thinking about high wage and opportunities in labor market. So for example, in the construction industry, we have a few pathway programs, but there are a lot of jobs out there, and also jobs in our own district that we can expose students to. So how can we expand pre-apprenticeship programs to give students those opportunities? So thank you.
Thank you so much. Next we have for sorry, it's the end of the day, literacy acceleration. Jen Carpenter?
Thank you. I'm Jen Carpenter, director that supports the Literacy Acceleration Plan. Just want to appreciate all the feedback, the smiles, the tears, even the grilling by Dr. Jackson. We appreciated that. Thank you for visiting us and asking us such difficult questions. We grow and learn from that. I want to also highlight some of the things that we're taking away as a team. We say that we are about parents and parents being true partners, and we need to dig into that more. We need to think about what that truly means. How are we making strong connections to our families, listening to our families, and having that true alignment and connection? We also got asked a lot of questions about how are we supporting and building capacity up the grade levels, because at this point we are supporting UTK to second. So we do have some ideas, but we are going to continue to ideate that alongside of our leaders, especially because those are very important people who are going to help create those conditions to build the capacity up the grade levels. We are going to continue to focus on the experience, the student experience, the teacher experience, the leader's experience. We're going to continue to collect street data, not just paying attention to that satellite data, but really focusing in on the true experience of our students and our teachers, because we know that's where the acceleration is going to happen. I think that was it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And next we have ethnic studies, Toya Prophet.
Good afternoon. So thank you for having us. We got a lot of feedback. Gave you a lot of information, and we appreciate all of it. So this is probably my favorite one. The piece of feedback we got was we were asked about how do we start to decolonize ideas and thinking around student achievement, right? If we're doing that in ethnic studies, how do we expand that to apply to more areas? And I really appreciated that one. We got some feedback around our liaison program. How this target schools that are specifically holdouts for bringing in liaisons, and also a request to create an ethnic studies toolkit for elementary schools. We got some feedback around family engagement. So we are trying to build our family engagement and that's probably the one area we've struggled with the most this year, getting anywhere with that. So we got some fabulous feedback. We got, instead of trying to get into the cluster meetings, which has not worked, maybe going to the coffee with the principals, the little principal meetings with parents will be great because more families show up there, and also working more with PTAs. So that was exciting. We got a question around how we support schools who have chosen pathways that aren't yet supporting students who transfer in, right? So looking into that a little bit more. We got some interesting feedback that we're definitely going to take around when we are surveying our students about their experience, aligning that survey with the same survey we give to the teachers, and looking at how teachers are also benefiting and experiencing ethnic studies. We want to be more strategic about the way that teacher activities lead to student outcomes. In our next presentation, when we see you next year, we will focus more on the struggles, our struggles and sticking points with ethnic studies. Because one thing that was nice was when people were really engaging with us and trying to help us problem solve some of the things that we struggle with. So that was something we really took away with, and we want to have a whole section about our struggles and invite feedback on that. And then,
Didn't get that. Could you try again?
Sorry, they were kidding. And then we want this is the first year we did student data, and we want to build on that and really show how we're growing that work. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to have Maureen come up and talk about communications.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again. This was terrific. I've seen a lot of LCAP workshops, and this has been the best. Appreciate everyone visiting, and I appreciate the feedback. In communications, as we shared with everybody, our focus, sort of summarizing the LCAP for communications this school year, has been to strengthen engagement with students, staff, and families with the purpose of promoting equity and access to essential information that will allow all of our students to thrive. And we talked about some of the adaptive and technical changes that we've been taking on to do this work. And what I loved about the feedback is that a lot of you kind of helped tack on new ways to even take some of this work even further. For example, Zach Patterson, our first student board member, gave us the goal of allow students to receive emails from the district. And it was a very simple goal, but it took a lot of work, a lot of collaboration with IT, thank you very much. And it allowed our student engagement office to execute their student engagement initiative. Matthew had a great suggestion as he talks to students throughout the district, they want more information. So Lorena and I are going to collaborate. Let's include the e-blast in the student newsletter so that our students get that information as well. That was a great suggestion. We have worked to communicate more in families' preferred native languages. We quietly launched our Spanish language e-blast with a very good open rate. We've sent all of our family communications from the district this year in 5 languages. And we had another suggestion, that's terrific. We had talked about how video storytelling is more popular than the written word. We had a great suggestion too. Let's do some back to school videos, informational videos in a family's native language that walks them through what to expect this school year. Report cards, parent-teacher conferences, breaks, and I think it's a terrific idea. Let's put together some of these videos, very informational in native languages, not subtitles, in the language, and let's share those out. I think that was a terrific idea. Expands on two things, video storytelling and communicating in native language, so I appreciate that. We also heard about interest in further tailoring our communications to enhance school and even cluster level communications. And so we'll take that to heart too and talk with our clusters and our principals about that. And also just continuing to strengthen our storytelling and telling the story of this district and how do we tell the story of the equity work and the inclusivity work that we're doing in a very cohesive, meaningful way that is very tailored to San Diego Unified School District. I feel like these goals are not cookie cutter goals. These are very much tailored to the work that we do and the place that we live. And so I appreciate all of the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. And let's see, we're going to move on to STEAM with Talia. That sounds like a podcast. STEAM with Talia.
Actually, I want to honor that Tali is here in the room with us as a Unified Science. I'm Zoe Randall, a STEAM resource teacher with STEAM, and together we are a Unified Science team and are very grateful to have the voices and diverse perspectives of everyone here to help us move our work forward and to shape our understanding of how we create a bigger impact and how we grow that. Some of the things that we heard were just how are we monitoring and measuring our impact? It's definitely something that we can grow. And one aspect of that we heard as an interesting connection was how could we look at student attendance data as a way to help include science in that conversation? Is that an engagement aspect to improve those metrics? And is that another data point that we can access to help our students and see themselves as part of the school day and get them hooked and excited? If they're coming and we can compare that data across different sites, what does that look like? And how does that help more students come and get excited and engaged in school? We also talked about how decision-making in STEM fields is really important to track. So we've been starting a STEAM initiative from the elementary UTK through 5 space, and we're just getting to that point where we can see students already as curious, creative change makers. But how does that persist, and what decisions do they continue to make? What STEM fields do they choose to go into in careers and in college, and how can we continue that continuum of support for students in science? And we heard multiple groups share the importance of students seeing themselves early on and continuing that engagement so that science is not isolated content separate from their world, but it's a part of them. It's their lived experience. And how do we shape that meaning for them? And how does science help bring a sense of meaning and understanding of their world into context so that they can truly be the change makers that we hope to see, challenging the problems that we hope to solve in the future, and which is now. And we definitely hope to continue making connections with our ethnic studies teams, with our SPED teams, with multilingual learners. How can we continue to help all of these initiatives come together? Science is a way that we can drive all of these truly important values of equity, belonging, and thriving home. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to continue this work.
Thank you so much. And next we have standards-based learning. And I think Sarah's going to come up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Matthews, the Program Manager for Cross-Content Literacy, and I'm going to share a couple of the takeaways and pieces of feedback we heard, and then I'll pass it to Georgia. So one thing that came up in a few different groups was the impact and the possibility of the impact and how we would measure it of social-emotional learning and standards-based learning, and how shifting from grades and points and things that are given by the teacher, to students having agency and knowing where they're at and being able to grow on that proficiency scale towards standard. So continuing to measure that and see how that is impacting our students and how that can lower their anxiety. The second thing that was mentioned often is inconsistencies from school to school, teacher to teacher in the implementation of standards-based learning in the actual classroom practice, and the need to continue to build capacity at sites. But how are we going to do that side by side? So if we're doing anything with teachers, how are we sitting by them and working with them as they're engaging in those capacity building practices at their sites? And also, while honoring the unique needs of our sites. Everyone's starting from a different place and has different needs for their community, students, and educators. Georgia.
Thank you. I just wanted to appreciate first everybody for staying the whole day. Can you hear me okay? Okay. And just really engaging in dialogue. This was probably one of the highlights over the course of a couple of months of work, just being able to connect and hear person to person what you're thinking, what questions you have and ideas. And so I just want to greatly honor you and appreciate you. A couple of things that I want to add to, we talked about standards-based learning, clarity, and consistency. And ways in which parents are engaging in standards-based learning, understanding what it is, what it looks like for their child across sites, across courses. And so really hearing that there's a need to publicize and give them a voice within their context. So really excited to partner with you in thinking through how we can do that. We talked about the advisory group that we're hoping to start next year for standards-based learning that will really bring together, we have lots of different groups right now. We have a collective, we have a work group all around standards-based learning. So how can we bring all of those voices to one room to be able to hear, just like we did today, your perspectives and your ideas so that we can really leverage those ideas in moving the work forward at these sites with families. Another thing that I wanted to mention is really just the validation around when it comes to how we share growth over time for a student, being able to have accessible tools for families and students to show that, to make it visible, to celebrate that, and to really lift that up. Standards-based learning, one of our greatest goals and something that I'm really proud of is really honoring the student, where they are, where they're going, and to celebrate that not just within their course, but over their scope of their entire UTK-12. And so one thing that we talked about extensively with groups is our reporting platform. And so wanting to really think through more about how we can get tools in the hands of students, teachers, and our families to be able to see that and celebrate that. One other thing that I wanted to mention is the idea around belonging, and for students to really feel like they belong in their school community, in their classroom, and that they are really engaged in practices that are meaningful to them. And so in standards-based learning, we have a lot of content, and I talked about that if you came to the poster. We have a lot of content that we can provide for educators when it comes to implementation. But if it's devoid of context, it's not meaningful for students. They're not going to have the buy-in. And we're just continuing to, perpetuate what we've done in the past with education. And so really thinking about how we can partner, and I heard a lot of validation and feedback around bringing the critical concepts and skills to life through things like projects, where we, elicit from students what they want to be able to do with these standards, and that they're right along the path with teachers and giving feedback and setting goals. So I really appreciate the conversations that we had. I'm feeling very full with ideas and hope. And appreciate all of you.
Thank you for that. And let's see, we are going to, I think, finish up with information technology with Julie.
Okay, so instructional technology basically presented a lot of things we still need to work on. So we got a lot of head nods and agreement with things that we're still working on. One area we're really focusing on, or plan to focus on next year, is, technology has always been a bit of an opt-in choice for teachers. And how are we avoiding that opt-in and really targeting those that need it at the classroom level and as part of our one-to-one ambassadors program. So how can we really identify the need and support in a positive way? We also see integration of computer science highlighted by Matthew, actually, where he says he sees it in all of his courses, right? Data science is embedded in everything we do, and we're excited to continue that integration. And last but not least, but from the parent side of things, looking at our tools, looking at the technology that we're being used, how are we focusing on efficiency? How are we limiting the tools that we're having our students access, that we're asking our parents to jump into? And how are we streamlining that in a way that makes it easier for students, teachers, and families? So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I think we're moving to public testimony. And each speaker will have 3 minutes. And Marty, I'm going to let you read the names of the speakers we have.
Yes, we have Marianne Hawk, Lalia Awale, Lucky Aiden, Marina Ibarra, and Crystal Troll.
Hello again, everyone. Once again, I'm Marianne Hawk, and I'm Vice Chair of the GATE District Advisory Committee, and I wanted to talk a bit about Goal 2, access to broad and challenging curriculum. All students deserve to make a year's worth of growth, and that includes the thousands of gifted and twice exceptional students in our district who have special educational needs. These students are often already working at one or more grade levels ahead of their age peers. For them to make a year's worth of growth, you have to meet them where they are. But they may begin the year already performing above grade level, and they may already know half of the course content. So they may already be at a 4 in September. So where do they go from there? Do they hit a ceiling? Do they start coasting or checking out of school? Do they have school refusal? Are they acting out? Just meeting grade level standards is not enough. Gifted students need to be learning with greater challenge, depth, and complexity, and they need to be moving forward toward new standards that they've not yet mastered. They need to be accelerated, and by that I mean learning is occurring at a faster pace and or at a higher grade level. Completing challenge assignments or extension assignments on grade level curriculum doesn't meet the test of accelerated learning. Addressing that is very challenging in a large mixability classroom. Gifted students do best when they are grouped together with other gifted students and not spread out across classrooms so that every class can be advertised as a GATE class. They deserve instruction from a highly qualified GATE certified instructor that is matched to their readiness level and who understands their learning differences and their emotional needs. When gifted and twice exceptional students don't get these things and they have the means, they leave our district to get their needs met elsewhere, maybe homeschooling or private school, charter schools. That leaves behind the gifted students who don't have such opportunities. This just strengthens the polarization between those with means and those without, and that's inequitable. Today we heard about the importance of all students feeling seen and heard and feeling like they belong. That includes our gifted and twice exceptional students, so please don't forget them. Supporting the needs of all of our gifted and twice exceptional students in our public school system provides equity and the education that they need. Thank you.
Hello? Oh wait, I'm a little tall, so wait. Hello? Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Lucky Aiden. I am the youth organizer at PANA, a partnership for the advancement of New Americans. We are a research, public policy, and community organizing hub. I'm here to speak about the academic success and college readiness goal of the LCAP. My role at PANA is to facilitate a youth-led space called Youth Congress, and this year, in collaboration with PSRO, Youth Voices were included in the recommendation process for the LCAP, which is very important because when you tell you exactly what they need, we need to listen as people that are in leadership positions. So they came up with 2 recommendations for the LCAP, which uplifts the educational inequality gap that they, as first-generation immigrant and refugee students face, and they hope that these recommendations will help solve and bridge that gap as well. The first recommendation is to develop a college preparatory elective for all students at the Hoover and Crawford cluster, what this looks like is to increase the awareness and accessibility of college readiness classes, to support students fill out college applications, college financial aid, scholarships, create workshop classes as well too, to help them articulate what they want to say for the college essays, and also to have career pathways, which include college fairs, career explorations, to have vocational opportunities as well too, and have college alumni, like first year, second year college students come to school to talk about college life, because a lot of the students are going to be our first generation students and they're not having those conversations at home and their parents didn't go through that process. So having somebody who is currently in college can come and tell them how to navigate college, the tips and tricks to be successful would be very tremendous, has a tremendous impact on their success. Their second recommendation is to improve the student and counselor relationship at the Hoover and Crawford cluster. And what they said that how that could be done is to reduce the gap of student to counselor ratio to 250 students per 1 counselor set by the American School Counselor Association. Students expressed that this can be done by hiring at least 1 full-time student at each of the schools. We know that Hoover and Crawford clusters have a population, probably 90% of their populations are first-generation immigrant and refugee students. And students said that having counselors that represent who they are and the background that they come from is very important to them. So those counselors that are going to be hired at the school, you need to come from the backgrounds of the students that they serve. We know that having representation is very important. It builds confidence. It also helps become successful. We want students to not only succeed in high school, but like in the future as well, to keep going in their careers. We submitted these recommendations to the board, and that we hope that these are going to be implemented in the LCAP, and that we want to let students know that their voices and their concerns are listened and that they are heard, and it's really important to them, especially for their academic success. So thank you for your time.
Do we have Lalia or Marina or Crystal?
Good afternoon. My name is Marina Ibarra, and I am part of the PSRO, Parents, Students, Residents Organized. And I just want to remind you all that we send you a copy of the recommendations that we collect this year from the community, the schools, the students, parents, and I want to encourage you to go through. I am so happy to see many changes right now, and I want to talk about the communication. I saw that there's a lot of improvement on the communication system, that we are going to have more languages on the Power School. And I want to encourage to get more, get more communication to the parents, having more languages on the project and the program, and having more involvement with the different ethnicities and parents that don't speak English in their houses, that the parents need to get to know what is happening, what it is happening at school with their kids and their own languages. And we are in support of these needs that the community needs. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's the afternoon. We made it. So I just want to thank everybody for the great conversations and collaboration today that we experienced. And Callie, it's been awesome to see your vision come to reality. So great work with this. So my comments are more broad regarding the LCAP as a whole. And I'm here today as a parent of 3 kids who attend San Diego Unified Schools, as well as the chair of the DAC, the District Advisory Committee on Compensatory Education. So I'm looking at the LCAP through 2 different lenses. And at the DAC, you know, our work is to support each school site council, or SSC is what they're referred to. And each SSC is responsible to plan and monitor their SPSA. And the SPSA connects to the LCAP, which is why this work is so important to me and the DAC. So every decision an SSC makes should be in support of all students, and particularly student groups such as English learners, foster youth, homeless, and low income. Many of the groups that are highlighted in our LCAP, as we saw. And to do this work, the SSCs use data. So we've been talking a lot about data today. And don't get me wrong, you know, I love data just as much as maybe the next data person, but we can't look at it in isolation. We have to be able to look at it holistically, make the connections between and amongst data points. For example, in the LCAP, you know, what I would really love to see in my dream LCAP would be connecting our actions and services to the metrics, and then connecting that to the resources that we're using to achieve the desired outcomes, and actually articulating what those desired outcomes are in the LCAP itself. So these are important for SSCs because they use that information to develop some of their own SPSAs. I would love to see data like this concentric image that we have here in a similar way. I see students in the middle, and I see all the qualitative and quantitative data pieces surrounding the student that tells us that we're actually meeting their needs. And what are those relevant data points? This is critical because, as mentioned earlier today, you know, that this LCAP isn't the best representation of our work as a district. It's come up a couple times. So moving forward, I hope we can craft an LCAP that's not just compliant, but strategic and relevant. But we have work to do. So crazy idea. I mentioned to Enrique earlier, you know, we're the 2nd largest district in California, right? So, and we're in a county with more than 40 school districts. Let's work together to talk to legislators at the state level to educate them about how to capture the right data to answer the right questions. Because we have a sense of what those questions are and what those data points are. That's my DAC role. Now, as a parent, I can 100% say that most families in our district have no concept or understanding of what the LCAP is or its importance. So I hope that moving forward, we can focus some of our efforts to educate families about the LCAP in tandem with our strategies and actions designed for student success. A big takeaway for me today was that there's so much happening district-wide, but some of the programs and activities don't necessarily get to all parts of the district. There's things happening in different places, in different pockets. I know that funding could be a factor, as well as, you know, the need for targeted support. But as someone who actually has read the LCAP, it's clear that, you know, it's not really clear what's happening where and why, and how resources are being used in specific ways for specific purposes. So if it's not clear to me, and I'm involved in this work, how clear is it to somebody who's not in this work as much, like another family? So I encourage district leadership to use this opportunity we have in the next round of the LCAP to thread that needle of all student success and all that we do as a district, what that looks like. So I think deeply about this work, and I think about it all the time because education is important to me, and it's important to our kids. It's important to all of us. And I'm excited to continue partnering with you. I'll probably make camp in Callie's office eventually. And I just really appreciate the opportunity for being involved in this work today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to all of our public speakers. And I think at this time, we're going to open up to trustees for any questions or comments that you'd like to discuss on LCAP goals 2, 3, and 6. Trustee Barrera.
Thank you, President Bozzo. Again, fantastic organization for the day, and thank you to all of the presenters. There are a couple of strategies, and I'm thinking in particularly literacy acceleration, but we could think the same, where we've got strategies where the goal is to build capacity at the site level, where we might currently have a resource teacher or somebody from the district who's working with the site to build capacity. And I know this is very much about resources, but I think the theory that we operate with is we then can pull the district resource and that the capacity will then, be sustained at the school level. And I'm not sure that that is true. And so we have to question ourselves about that. So for instance, we saw great growth in the 30 schools where we're doing literacy acceleration with, literacy acceleration resource teachers. But if we pull them from those 30 sites and then we're moving on, to the next sites, will we see that growth go backwards? And I think we need to think hard about that. So for instance, the community schools model is that what's core to making the model successful is a community schools coordinator at each school. I don't think the work can be done successfully without the community schools coordinator. And so, and our design is that we don't then sort of after a number of years or period of time, pull that coordinator. So I do question the strategy of starting something at a school, seeing results, and then pulling the resources and hoping that that the work can be sustained. And I know this is a big question because of sustainability and resources, but I think it's something that we need to look at because so many of these strategies are showing success and will continue to show success. And we don't want to, 5 years from now, look backwards and say, we had a great thing going on at X elementary school when we had the literacy acceleration resource teacher there, and now we don't have it anymore. So that's just one thing to think about.
Thank you, Trustee Brewer. Yeah, and I asked the exact same question when I was there is when we're looking at literacy, it's kindergarten through second and we're looking at certain schools, but even beyond that, like what are we doing at third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, middle school, high school? Because sometimes I feel because I've had students or daughters go through the system that we kind of lose some of that after they get past second grade, and we still want them to be passionate about reading and all those kinds of things, particularly in the schools that we're trying to focus in. And sometimes I feel like that gets lost. And I love the idea that we're doing STEAM and all the other things, but we don't want to lose the literacy piece of that because there's so much other competing areas.
Yeah, sometimes or all times, we just need to be honest about what it takes, to make things happen, to eliminate achievement gaps, all these, things that everybody claims they want. But if we know what's working, and it, costs money to make it work, we have to be clear about that. And then that's about our, advocacy as a school district.
Trustee Hazen?
Yes, I appreciate the conversation that just started because, I think the reality is that we have tough choices to make. And one of the questions I've been wondering about, and I brought it up at the last session I went to, which is, one of the guiding questions is, what is changing, being eliminated, and something else. And there's not a lot of conversation about what we're eliminating, right? And in order to make space and invest appropriately in the things where we're seeing the most dramatically positive results, things have to be eliminated. And I know it's uncomfortable and I know it's unpopular, but we can't double down on the things that are working and continue to do all the other things in all of the same ways. And so I think that is some of the work, that we have to do as we look ahead to the budget we're about to adopt, and the LCAP goals we're about to adopt this year and the year after. And I know when I brought it up and I said, so what are we eliminating? It's uncomfortable. People don't want to answer that. And so I'm just encouraging everyone to think really critically, and not about what each of us wants as adults, but if we're centering students supported by their families, what is it that they need and how do we get that for them?
Trustee Pedersen.
I just have a couple things. First of all, thank you to all the presenters today. Thank you, Callie, Fabi. This is great. I think all of us are pretty questioned out, so it's a little bit, off screen in a certain sense, we've all been asking questions and getting answers all day. And one of my thoughts, and in fact, I had a question for the Literacy Acceleration Team, which was, this is a composite intervention. It's got professional development elements, it's got instruction and curriculum elements, it's got high dosage tutoring elements. Can we work with data to try to disambiguate this, to figure out how to allocate resources to these things? Because to your point, we're in labor negotiations, we're going to have to find a lot of cuts, and that getting good data, disambiguating even within a literacy acceleration, because that is, like I say, it's a composite thing. What is working within that thing? And so to that point, and I think all of us heard other people ask questions, got answers. If we could, in the future, I don't want to add extra work, but develop some sort of FAQ out of these things, because each of these groups got questions and they had answers, and some of them were good questions and some of the answers were very important. And you'll never capture that because we were all in our little spaces. So it'd be great to get a kind of FAQ out of this. And the other thing I'll say, it's late in the day and we're all very low on serotonin, and we've been moved and emotionally and psychologically, and so I don't get depressed. I get the oceanic feeling. So so I just want to say this. One of the notes, and it's very true about we need to be focused on helping kids become what they're going to become. But I don't want to get lost. I don't want to get lost in that. We also, I think for a lot of us are Gen X in here. Looking around, not to age us all, but and part of our experience is like the high point of the sort of tabula rasa. It's all about nurture and rather than nature. And then as we enter into our own lives, we see our kids and we're like, oh my God, that kid came out 70% that. When we really come to terms both with the idea that we have natures that are biological and genetic, that are epigenetic, that are cultural, that are family environment. And this is where, and for a lot of us, I think, and maybe this won't resonate, but I assume will. I go back a lot to Eliot's Little Gidding, which is the beginning of the poem is, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. But I go back because so much of what we, quote, become, we really knew that when we were 5 and 6 and 7, and now I have kids. They don't know it in a meta sense, but I can watch it. It's in its pure form. And they're going to get all the stuff that we as parents are disciplining them to become. And they're going to get, all the indoctrination that we're providing or the class system is providing and the economy is providing about what life is about. And they're going to get peer pressure and all that. And so I want to, for me, part of this work is not just helping them become something, but doing the work to help them understand the self-discovery work, because we have the opportunity to have these children before they've gone on this journey that our society and their families and realities impose on them. We can help them early on, because a lot of us aren't able to really feel fulfillment in the fullest sense into our mid-30s and our 40s, when we're like, oh my God, that's my nature. I knew that was what I loved, and what, the first thing we learn about ourselves is anxiety, right? Because it's like, that's not quite me, And so if we could, in addition to helping these kids become something, to help them on that journey of self-discovery to be something and to recognize that they have a nature, and to learn that early, And to lean into it is a beautiful thing to give a child, not just becoming, but being.
Yeah, and you woke
Trustee
me up
Whitehurst
on
Payne.
that. You woke me up on that, okay. And all of this discussion, I think Richard and I pointed out to the entire group that we went around to, we're looking for that holistic approach in the sense that we have too many discrete, I'm math only, been there, single subject credential teacher, I'm literacy only, I'm history, social studies, or whatever it is. And looking at the entire process together to see whether or not we can work with children so that if you're doing social science, it's the same thing as it is in computer science or whatever, just different dimension. You're doing data that relates to the social science, maybe that you're, I don't know, voting and what that means in society and how that works into the environment that you talked about, Richard. So I would push us to begin to think about the bigger picture. A child just sees, oh, you're my teacher for this, my teacher for that. If we could just bring it all together and have them come in and they see us all as a group who are coordinated, working together on their behalf, it would be helpful. My end of the day comment. Thank you.
Love that. Anyone else over here? I was just going to add, for as far as Trustee Pedersen and I were at the talking with communications, and I think they do a fantastic job. But one thing we talked about, he had mentioned the Mission Bay cluster meeting, that they had a student panel and how impressive that was. And just hearing from the students, and why are we not getting them out more in the community? We could have student panels coming to our town council meetings, you know, just to show what we have. And I don't think that's all communications job. I think it's all of our jobs to just get that message out and be relevant, because we know, you know, that charter schools and private schools do a really good job of doing that. And I would like us to do more of that in the community and show all the good things we are doing. And one thing I had suggested was, and I've suggested this before, but was to have an app, at least for the students to start. We were talking about ways to provide better communication for the students. Why not have an app where they can communicate with each other? Because right now they can't email each other in the system. So, and you know, that just seems like such a basic thing. So something like that would help, just because we want to stay relevant. And a lot of these other schools are doing those kinds of things. And if we want to stay relevant, we need to keep up with that. So just some thoughts on around that. And did anyone else have any comments to wrap up? We're good? All right. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. Oh, sorry, Dr. Jackson, why don't you? Yes, I was going to say, I was surprised that you weren't right there.
I didn't know if that was in the script or not. I just have a few things.
Go right ahead.
First, I want to say thank you to all the staff. I know we talked about Callie's leadership, but we also have our tech staff, we have our board office. And to all of the presenters, I know that, you know, for many of us who've been a part of this process, we know the obvious, but I think it's worth stating, many of the folks who are leading this work and presenting this work, some were not with us when we started this. So the editors, the writers of the LCAP have been through like 3 iterations. And for you all to show up the way you showed up today is impressive. And I know that I asked some tough questions, and I'm going to continue to do so. This is not a specific critique of who you are. It's more of an expectation that I have as a leader for all of us, because I know we care deeply. I know we love deeply. And I think I can say this on behalf of all of us. We know that we have not arrived to the level that we need to. And I have some data points to suggest this in relationship to our core values. This design was to launch a way of being aligned to the concentric circle. This is not, you know, the end of our journey. This is the beginning of our journey. So I thank you for taking the first step. of putting yourselves out there, putting your work out there, and receiving feedback and engaging in conversation. And I encourage us to continue to do so and to receive feedback and to receive questions from a partnership lens, not a critical sort of gotcha place. And so I do want us to recognize that we have made growth. We are not yet where we want to be. And so I want to commend all of you and those who are here now and those who are not here for doing such a great job. Thank you for that. I do have some recognition that I noticed based on feedback that I received directly that we have two specific areas that we need to really get better at, and that is we need to learn more about how to design goals with metrics. Right, like that, and that's right, and both for staff and for students. I know, Richard, you talked about capacity building, and I know that's challenging, particularly because our second goal that is going to require all of us, and that is that we need to develop partnerships with our school sites. If we look at this concentric circle, many of us in this room are on the outer banks of the white circle there. And we're actually talking about the puzzle pieces and the students at the center with supports from the family. The gap that I'm noticing is the schools, the leadership, right? Like there is this gap that we need to get underneath. That many of the presenters were talking about how difficult it was, and we're going to places where it's the point of least resistance. It's the place. And that may not be in relation to the data, the map data that we're using. And yet now we're asking staff to come and present on data when they actually know the challenges that they faced. So I want to publicly recognize the challenge and the difficulties of that, and yet it cannot be an excuse going forward. So I am publicly saying I acknowledge that. But this is our work. The other thing I want to lift up is, Cody, you mentioned this, Richard, you talked about this, that this notion of building capacity, and I heard this as well, that we don't have the resources, and I'm going to push a bit about this. I'm going to say we have the resources. I want to share a resource that we have. And her story moved me because it was so aligned to the concentric circle model. And she's right over here. Her name is Gabriella. Can you please stand? She is a second grade teacher at Adams Elementary School. And before you clap, you should know why you're clapping. And the reason is because she presented around literacy acceleration. And I know I pushed the team and I said, I don't really want the presentation. And I said, what has been challenging? And Gabriella said, oh, so much. And then we started having a conversation. And I said, what was the difference? What was the change? And Jen, knew where I was going and said, what's changed in you? And I'm like, Jen, don't do that. Let her be. And here's what I was moved by. What she said is she recognized that the literacy acceleration coach was able to do some things, and she said, I can do that too. And she started doing that. And then the principal coached her around, don't worry about the things that are not in your control. Just worry about those things that you can control. And so it was really about her being, her feeling a sense of belonging and worth and value, her acknowledgement that she was not able to just yet. And that the resource teacher held her in a space that saw her and that heard her. And I believe we have so many teachers that we are not yet tapping into and not yet creating spaces of belonging and hearing them and seeing them. And they're defensive, much like our leaders. And so my ask is that we, as a collective group, can be reminded of our core values and our concentric circle model. And that this notion of doing, and I did say something, and I apologize, Jen, publicly, I won't tell them exactly, but I will. You know I will. I said, see, here's the thing. What we need to do is put Gabriella's story on a poster. We haven't yet figured that out. And so what I said is, and then we do all this crap. And I pointed to the board and I said, I apologize, it's not crap on the board. But you understand. And I think the board members said it about our LCAP. We write all this goobly-gop, whatever. And Gabriella's story is exactly what we're after. And now Gabriella can create that for her colleague. And her colleague can create it for another colleague. See, we do have the resources, but we are not tapping into them yet. And so I leave you with, my greatest fear is that we now know better and we don't do better. So I don't want to be here next year talking about what we're going to do the following year. Thank you for the reflection. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you to our educational partners. This is truly a great first step. And the beauty of first steps, you ever see children take their first step? It is lightning quick when they are running around and we have no idea what happened. Let us be that for our students and our staff and our community. Let our first step lead to lightning quick movements of change so that next year and future presentations are designed, aligned to our concentric circle with the freedom to be authentic and not have to say to me, 4 times I heard, we were told what to write. We were told what to do. Get in some good trouble. Get in some good trouble. We can be aligned, but we don't have to be robots. So I encourage you to do and to be greater than what you do. And as you laugh at each of the board members, please always remember the spirit of Ubuntu. When you think I'm crazy, it's because we are all a little crazy. That's my point, Dr. Whitehurst-Payne. So I am because we are, and I leave you with the spirit of Ubuntu, and I'm not sure if anyone else had anything, but I just want to thank you for a great day.
Okay, we are 30 minutes past, so let's keep that in consideration, but yes.
Couldn't we keep it up? And now we're starting all over again. This is new, and I thank you for being there, and I commend you. But let's not, a year from now, asking, didn't we start this years ago and it went nowhere? So take him seriously when he says that.
All right, are we ready? This meeting is now adjourned. Before anyone else can talk. The next regular meeting will be held on June 20th. Boom.